We are starting a new story. He left me for his assistant. For years later, he invited me to their wedding to show how happy he was. I agreed. I brought my new husband. The groom's father stood up during the toast. If these stories mean something to you, please subscribe. Your subscription means more to me than you can imagine. It is motivation. It is the reason I keep telling these stories. And please write in the comments where you are watching from. Now let's begin. It was a cold December morning in Nizhny Novgorod when Stella Ustinova received an envelope. Thick cream-colored paper, gold embossing. Her name was written in calligraphy she immediately recognized. She didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Pyotr Golitsyn, her ex-husband, the man who left her 4 years ago for a younger colleague named Daria Kabanova. The man who told her she was reliable but not interesting enough, while she packed her things into cardboard boxes because she couldn't afford suitcases. Inside the invitation was a handwritten note. Stella, I know things didn't end well between us, but I really want you to come. I want you to see that I am happy. I think it will help both of us find closure. She read the note twice, then placed it on the kitchen table and looked out the window at the birch trees in the yard. The trees had been bare for weeks. Winter in Nizhny Novgorod was always like this, gray skies, cold air that cut straight to the bone. But over the 4 years since Pyotr left, Stella had realized something. She realized that winter always ends, and she also realized that some people stay cold even after the thaw comes. He wanted to show her what she had lost. He had no idea what she had gained. Let me take you back to Nizhny Novgorod in 2009. The city stretched along the Volga River, divided by the Oka into old and new parts on both banks. Stella was 23 years old. She worked as a literature teacher at an ordinary school in the Avtozavodski district. She lived in a small apartment on Rodionova Street. At night, she graded notebooks. Every morning she walked to work through the same courtyard, past the same elderly women feeding the same stray cats. She met Pyotr Golitsyn at a gathering with friends. He was studying architecture at the university. He was tall, sharp, full of sketches and dreams about buildings that would change the city skyline. He spoke about his plans with such confidence that she believed in him completely. They got married in 2011. A modest ceremony at the registry office on Bolshaya Pokrovskaya Street. His mother, Rada Galitsina, cried. Her father made a toast that lasted too long. Stella wore a cream-colored dress she had been saving for 3 months to afford. Pyotr squeezed her hand so tightly her fingers went numb. She thought it was the beginning of everything. For the next 6 years, Stella worked and waited. Pyotr needed to finish his master's degree, then complete an internship, then pass his qualification exam. Each time, she agreed. Each time, she took extra work hours, gave private lessons on weekends, and took on additional classes. She paid the rent for their small apartment on the south side of the city with thin walls and a radiator that knocked all night. She edited his thesis, typed his applications, cooked him dinner at midnight when he came back from the library. She told herself that this was what marriage meant, supporting each other, building something together. What she didn't understand was that she was the only one building it. In 2014, Stella started talking about children. She was 28, Pyotr was 30. She had always wanted a family. He said they needed to wait until he finished his studies. She waited. Then he finished his studies and said they needed to wait until he passed his exam. She waited. Then he passed his exam and said they needed to wait until he established himself at the firm. She waited. Every time, the conversation ended the same way. He told her she was pressuring him. He said she didn't understand his career. He said she was being dramatic. And she went back to grading notebooks, cooking dinner, waiting. His mother, Rada, started making comments during family gatherings. At an Easter dinner in 2015, 12 people gathered around a long table at the Golitsyn family home. Rada made a toast to Pyotr and his bright future. Then she looked at Stella and said, "Maybe Stella will someday figure out what she wants to do with her life." Everyone laughed. Pyotr laughed. Stella sat there with her hands folded in her lap, counting the seconds until she could leave the table. She stayed for 2 more years after that. Pyotr got his license in 2016. He got a job at a prestigious architecture firm in the city center. A few months later, he started coming home later, then even later, then sometimes not at all until morning. He talked about a woman named Daria Kabanova he worked with. A junior architect, young, sharp-tongued, always laughing at his jokes. Stella asked about her once. He said she was just a colleague. He said Stella was being dramatic. He said it the same way he had for years whenever she asked for anything: more time, more help, more attention. You want too much, Stella. You always want too much. In March 2017, Pyotr sat her down at the kitchen table. The same table where she had graded notebooks for 6 years while he studied. The same table where she had eaten dinner alone more times than she could count. He told her he was leaving. He said he had been unhappy for a long time. He said she was holding him back. He said Daria understood him in a way she never could. He said Daria was ambitious, interesting, that she challenged him. Then he said the words she would carry for years. You're just reliable, Stella. You're not interesting. You're not enough. I need someone who pushes me forward. She sat there, didn't scream, didn't cry. She asked where she was supposed to go. He shrugged and said the apartment was in his name anyway. He had put down the deposit 5 years earlier. It didn't matter that she had paid the rent every month since then. He moved out 3 days later. Stella learned from a neighbor that he and Daria had already signed a lease on the other side of the river. The divorce took 4 months. Pyotr kept everything: the apartment, the car, the friends, the narrative. He told people Stella was difficult, that she let herself go, that he tried to save the relationship but it was impossible with her. His mother told women at the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral that Stella had refused to have children. The truth was that Pyotr had constantly delayed the issue of children, first until finishing his master's degree, then until getting his license, then until he established his career, and then he left. Stella moved into a studio apartment on the 4th floor of a building without an elevator. She packed her clothes into cardboard boxes she collected from a nearby store because she couldn't afford suitcases. She stood in that empty apartment she once called home and looked at the marks on the wall where their wedding photo used to hang. She didn't get out of bed for 3 months. The school granted her leave. Her mother, Zoya Ustinova, came from Saratov and stayed with her. She didn't talk much, just sat, knitted, made tea, and waited for her daughter to find her way back. One night, Stella found a box she had packed without thinking. Inside was a small icon of the Kazan Mother of God, which her grandmother had given her when she was 12. She held it and prayed for the first time in many years. She didn't pray for Pyotr to come back. She prayed for the strength to stop wanting him back. She didn't realize she was rebuilding herself. She thought she was falling apart. She didn't date men, didn't seek revenge, didn't post on social media about how unfairly she had been treated. She did something quieter and harder. She went back to university, enrolled in an educational management program, and studied at night after teaching all day. She wrote her dissertation on strategies to improve schools in underprivileged districts. While Pyotr drove Daria to Kazan and posted photos of her laughing in front of the Kazan Kremlin, Stella studied case files in her studio under a single lamp, while the radiator knocked just like it had in their old apartment. Only now, she didn't have to wait for anyone. The silence belonged to her. By the end of the 2nd year after the divorce, she was promoted to deputy principal of school number 91 in the Avtozavodski district. The school was considered underperforming, attendance was low, and morale was even lower. She spent a year and a half rebuilding it, hiring new teachers, launching extracurricular programs. Every morning she stood at the gates and learned every student's name. She learned their parents' names, learned their stories. One of those students was a boy named Semyon Famin. He was 9 years old. His mother, Marina, had died a year earlier. His father, Danner, was trying to hold things together. Semyon was falling behind in school, not doing his homework, getting into fights, sitting in the back row of Stella's classroom with his arms crossed, staring out the window. She started staying after class with him, just reading, just sitting. At first, he didn't talk much, just like her. They simply sat in silence and read. After a few weeks, he began to talk about his mother, then his father, then how he didn't want to go to school because everyone knew his mother had died and looked at him differently. Stella told him she understood what it felt like when you sensed everyone was watching you. She didn't tell him why, but he seemed to understand. Children understand more than we think. In the third year after the divorce, the school's test scores rose by 22%. The district recognized the success. A local newspaper published an article. There was a photo of Stella in the teacher's room, smiling, holding a stack of student essays. She framed the photo and hung it above her desk, not out of pride, but as proof. Proof that she could build something that would last. That same year, Danner Famine began coming to school events. He attended parent meetings, winter concerts, and volunteered to help with building renovation projects. He was calm, dependable, the kind of man who arrived early and stayed late to stack chairs after everyone else had left. They didn't rush. For an entire year, they were just friends. Danner told her about Marina, how they met at the factory where they both worked, before she got sick, how she fought for 3 years, how Semyon still slept with her sweater under his pillow. Stella told Danner about Pyotr, the 6 years of waiting, the cardboard boxes, the 3 months in bed. She told him things she had never told anyone. Danner listened. He didn't try to fix anything. He just sat with her, the way her mother had sat with her. Present. Steady. Unafraid of silence. "You know what I think," he said one evening. They were sitting on a bench outside the school. The courtyard was empty. The birch trees were just starting to turn green. "What? I think the problem was never you. You just chose someone who couldn't see you." She looked at him. He didn't say it to comfort her. He said it because he believed it. And for the first time in many years, Stella believed it too. They filed their marriage application at the registry office in November. And in December, 1 month after Stella received Pyotr's invitation, they quietly got married. No white dress, no guests. Just Stella, Danner, Semyon, and a registry office clerk who asked if they wanted music. Danner said yes. The clerk played a recording of classical music that Stella didn't recognize. Semyon held her hand the entire ceremony. That evening, they had dinner at their kitchen table. A small apartment in the Meshchersky district, 2 bedrooms. The window looked out onto a courtyard with birch trees. Semyon said his math teacher was unfair. Danner talked about the project he was working on. Stella listened, and she understood that she was no longer waiting for anyone. Not supporting someone else's career, not editing someone else's dissertation at midnight. She was simply living. And that was enough. Pyotr's wedding invitation arrived in November, a month before her quiet ceremony with Danner. Stella was at work when the secretary handed her the envelope. She recognized the return address, the handwriting. She didn't open it until she got home. She sat at her kitchen table. Danner wasn't home yet. Semyon was at a friend's place. She opened the envelope and read the invitation. Then she read the handwritten note. "Stella, I know things didn't end well between us, but I really want you to come. I want you to see that I am happy. I think it will help both of us find closure." She put the note down, looked out the window at the birch trees, then picked up her phone and called Danner. "I need to tell you something." She read him the note. He was silent for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to go." "Then we go." "You're not angry?" Stella said. "He wants to show you what you lost. He has no idea what you have. Let's show him." She agreed. In the guest line, she wrote spouse. The wedding was on December 18th. The restaurant was on the embankment, the same place Piotr had once taken Stella for their 5th anniversary, where he had spent the entire dinner on his phone. It was decorated with white flowers and candles. About 60 guests. People Stella recognized from Piotr's work, members of his family. His mother, Rada, wore dark blue. His father, Gavril, stood quietly by the bar as always. Stella wore a burgundy dress. Piotr had always told her she couldn't wear red, that it was too bold for her. She had bought the dress 3 weeks earlier. Dana wore a gray suit that Semyon had helped him choose. They entered together. Her hand in his. A shift moved through the room. People turned. Some recognized her. Whispers started. Piotr stood at the entrance, greeting guests. He saw her. 3 expressions crossed his face in 3 seconds: recognition, confusion, something like regret. Daria stood beside him in a white dress with a high collar. She was thinner than Stella remembered. Her smile looked fixed. "Stella," Piotr said. "You came?" "You invited me," she replied. He looked at Danner. His eyes dropped to Danner's hand on her back. "This is my husband, Danner." The room froze, then stirred, then froze again. Daria stepped forward and kissed Stella twice on the cheek, the way people do when they want to appear gracious. "Very happy you could come," she said. Her eyes didn't match her smile. The ceremony had already taken place earlier that day at the registry office. This was only the banquet. The registrar was not present. Guests drank, made toasts. Piotr's best friend, Arkhip Istomin, stood and spoke about how Piotr had finally found someone who matched his ambition, how Daria was his equal, his partner, a woman who understood his drive. Stella listened. Danner squeezed her hand under the table. Then Gavril Golitsyn, Piotr's father, stood up. A quiet man who rarely spoke at family gatherings. The man who had watched his son leave Stella and said nothing. He held his wine glass, his hand trembling. "I'm not good at speeches," he said. "But tonight I need to say something." Silence filled the room. The kind of silence that signals something is about to change. "My son is a talented architect. I'm proud of him. But he is not always honest. Not about his life, not about his past, not about what really happened 4 years ago." Piotr set his glass down. "Dad." Gavril continued, calm and steady. "Stella is here tonight. She doesn't know I'm going to say this. But I stayed silent for 4 years. I watched my son tell people she was difficult, that she didn't want children, that she held him back. None of it is true." Daria's face went pale. Piotr stared at the table. Stella worked while he studied. She paid the rent. She edited his thesis. She wanted children. He kept delaying. She stayed. He left. And since then, he has been telling a different story. Gavril looked across the room at Stella. "Forgive me, Stella. I should have said this years ago. I didn't because I was afraid of losing my son. But I also lost something. I lost the truth. And I lost the chance to tell you that you deserved better." The silence lasted about 10 seconds. It felt like 10 years. Piotr stood up, his face red. "Dad, sit down. This is not the place or time. There is never a good time for the truth. That's why people wait too long." Daria was crying openly now, not quietly. Angry tears. She looked at Piotr, not Stella. "Is that true? You told me she left you." Piotr didn't answer. He looked at Stella. Stella stood up. Danner stood with her. She looked at Gavril. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Then she looked at Piotr. "You wanted me to come so I could see you happy. So I could see what I lost. But I didn't lose anything, Piotr. I lost a man who called me reliable and not good enough after I spent 6 years building his career. That's not loss. That's release. She picked up her bag. Danner took her hand. I hope this marriage becomes what your previous one wasn't. But I'm not here to close a chapter. I closed it 4 years ago. I'm here only to remind you that it wasn't me who left, you made it impossible for me to stay. They walked out. The door closed behind them. The cold air hit Stella's face. It was quiet on the embankment. The Volga River was frozen. Danner hugged her. Are you okay? He asked. More than okay. What are you thinking about? She looked at the frozen river, then at him. I'm thinking that I spent 6 years building someone else's dream, and then I spent 4 years building my own. And now I have something he will never understand. I have peace. 6 months later, Stella's school was recognized as a model of successful transformation. She was invited to speak at educational conferences across the region. She talked about rebuilding, about what happens when you stop waiting to be chosen by someone else and start choosing yourself. Gavril sometimes called her. He came to Semyon's school events. He said he and Pyotr barely spoke anymore. He said the truth was worth losing his son's comfort. He said he realized silence is also betrayal. Pyotr and Darya's marriage didn't last long. A few months after the wedding, Darya filed for divorce and moved to Moscow, where she received an offer from another firm. Pyotr stayed alone in the apartment on the other side of the river, with the same view he once showed Stella as something she could never afford. One evening, Semyon came into the kitchen. Stella was making tea. Danner was reading at the table. Stella, can I ask you something? She sat down across from him. Ask me anything. He looked at his hands for a long time, then raised his eyes. My mother is gone. She's been gone for a long time. But you were here. You were here every day. You come to my school, you make dinner, you help me with my homework. You're the only mother I remember. His voice trembled. Stella felt her throat tighten. I want to ask, will you adopt me? If you want to. If you think I. She pulled him into her arms before he could finish. Yes, she said. Yes, of course. Yes. Danner placed his hand over both of them. For a long time, no one spoke. The kettle boiled and whistled. No one moved to turn it off. People told Stella Ustinova she was reliable. They told her she wanted too much. They told her she wasn't enough. She believed it for 6 years. Then she spent 4 years proving it was a lie. Her ex-husband invited her to his wedding to show her what she had lost. She arrived with a better man. She left with her dignity intact. And she realized the only thing she had ever truly lost was the weight of someone who never intended to carry her in return. Sometimes the people who leave your life don't take something from you. They make space for something better to grow. Thank you for listening.